The story begins with Ichino Shion, a 17-year-old magic student who sees himself as an ordinary failure. When asked what kind of person he really is, Shion gives the simplest answer possible. He is nothing more than a C-rank mage you could find anywhere. And yet, the moment Shion strikes one of his dramatic poses, his expression says something completely different. In his own mind, he has absolutely nailed the aura of a mysterious, overwhelmingly powerful magician. At Gilbert Royal Crawford Academy of Magic, homeroom teacher Rena Restia announces a series of one-on-one mock battles. The results will affect class assignments, so she orders every student to fight seriously and calls the next pair forward. One of those students is Ichino Shion, a second-year member of Class C. Facing another student across the arena, Shion admits that it has been a while since his last mock battle, but he looks eager to begin. Rena silently watches from the side while Shion smiles to himself. Rather than looking nervous, he decides he might as well enjoy the match. The battle starts, and Shion's opponent immediately opens with Windblade. Shion responds at once, raising his own magic as the first projectile races across the arena. Their opening spells crash together in the center of the field, producing a violent burst of wind and mana. Neither student gains a clear advantage from the first exchange. As the dust settles, Shion studies the clash and realizes their long-range power is roughly equal. His opponent is already preparing another spell, forcing Shion to think several steps ahead. A volley of fireballs comes flying toward him. Shion answers with Flame Vortex Shield, using another basic spell to catch the incoming flames before they can reach him. Shion immediately follows with Water Ball, but his opponent blocks it with another flame-based defense. Steam fills the arena and obscures their vision, so a gust of wind is used to clear the battlefield. Even before visibility fully returns, Shion is already moving into the next phase. His opponent notices that Shion has begun preparing another spell and braces for whatever is coming. Then something seems wrong. The expected magic circle is not appearing normally. The delay makes it look as though Shion's next spell is failing to deploy. For a moment, his opponent wonders whether Shion has simply run out of mana. Even Shion's strained expression makes the situation look dangerous. But the hesitation is a bluff. Shion has been preparing magic with both hands, hiding the true timing of his next move until the last possible moment. Shion suddenly releases Lightning Storm, revealing that his delayed casting was part of a calculated setup. The spell erupts across the arena before his opponent can comfortably react. His opponent barely escapes the lightning and hurriedly raises an earth wall. The defense comes up just in time, preventing the attack from ending the match immediately. Shion realizes the activation was still slightly too slow. His opponent survived by the narrowest margin, proving that Shion's clever timing alone is not enough to guarantee victory. The pressure of the exchange leaves his opponent visibly shaken, but the battle is not over. Both students remain standing and prepare to continue. Another fireball is launched into the arena, restarting the offensive. Shion once again has to deal with raw elemental pressure coming straight at him. His opponent refuses to believe Shion can win using nothing but beginner-level spells and unleashes Water Vortex Storm. The much larger spell surges forward with enough force to overwhelm the battlefield. Shion cancels his own spell and is swallowed by the incoming torrent before he can complete another counter. The enormous wave tears across the arena as Rena watches carefully. Water crashes through the field and leaves Shion unable to continue the exchange. The decisive attack finally breaks the stalemate. When the water settles, Shion is down while Rena silently evaluates what she has just seen. Something about the way he fought clearly caught her attention. The match is called, and Theodore is declared the winner. On paper, Shion has simply lost another practical battle. As Shion leaves the field, Rena keeps staring after him. She has known him long enough to feel that something about his performance does not add up. Rena reflects that she has watched Shion for 3 years. Yet, this match felt strangely different. Her instincts tell her that there is more to his actions than the result suggests. The records, however, are perfectly ordinary. Shion's grades in the major magical attributes are consistently C-rank, with nothing on the assessment sheet suggesting hidden genius. Still, Rena remembers how deliberately Shion delayed spell activation and how precisely he controlled the timing of his beginner spells. He even reacted to Theodore's attacks in ways that felt too calculated for an average student. The more Rina thinks about it, the more suspicious she becomes. She begins to wonder whether Xian is intentionally hiding his true abilities from everyone around him. Xian notices the way Rina is staring and immediately guesses what she must be thinking. In his imagination, there is no doubt about it. His teacher has finally sensed the terrifying power he is concealing. Meanwhile, his classmates casually praise the match and comment that he fought better than expected. To them, Xian's performance looked surprisingly clever despite the loss. Xian waves off the praise and insists that, in reality, he was completely helpless. He treats the defeat as proof that he still has a long way to go. His friends keep asking how he managed to make the fight look so competitive. Xian answers with his usual awkward confidence, while the people around him remain unsure how seriously to take him. One classmate points out that Xian's raw magic power was not impressive at all. Even so, the way he combined simple spells and read the flow of the battle was unusually effective. Another student concludes that Xian fought with magic far more cleverly than most people in the class. Even without overwhelming power, that kind of combat sense makes him difficult to dismiss. The conversation shifts to Xian's background. He comes from a merchant family, rather than a famous magical bloodline, making his strange confidence and unusual fighting style even harder for his classmates to explain. After the match, Xian and Theodore exchange a handshake and thank each other for the battle. Whatever happened in the arena, there is no personal hostility between them. Theodore still feels that Xian was holding something back and presses him about it. Xian immediately denies the idea, trying to shut down any suspicion before it grows. Xian tells Theodore that he is being overestimated and insists that what everyone saw was his full power. As far as Xian claims, there is no secret reserve waiting to be revealed. Rina is not convinced. Speaking privately, she admits that she does not know why Xian would do it, but she is certain he is hiding something about his abilities. The person listening to Rina can only react with surprise. From the outside, the idea that an ordinary C-rank student is concealing greater power sounds almost unbelievable. Later, the scene moves away from the training arena and back toward the academy dormitory, where the truth about Xian begins to come into focus. The narration finally addresses the mystery directly. Despite all the suspicion surrounding him, the man called Ichino Xian is not secretly suppressing some incredible magical power. In fact, Xian has absolutely zero hidden power. His dramatic behavior has convinced people that he must be concealing something, but his actual magical ability really is as limited as the records say. Xian's abilities are undeniably C-rank, and he was born into an ordinary merchant family with no legendary magical pedigree. The real reason he acts this way lies somewhere else entirely. As a child, Xian adored the heroic mages from adventure stories. He read about them obsessively, copied their poses, and filled his imagination with tales of impossible magical greatness. Then, after a certain incident, that childhood fascination took a much stranger turn. Xian's imagination stopped being simple admiration and grew into something far more intense. Ever since then, Xian has lived with an elaborate delusion about himself. He does not merely admire legendary mages, he genuinely loves acting as though he belongs among them. Inside his own fantasy, Xian is the strongest mage alive. Red eyes, ominous poses, overwhelming titles. Everything about his imaginary persona is designed to look like the final boss of a heroic tale. Xian even believes his true level is SSS-Rank, comparable to the greatest hero who ever existed. To him, hiding that supposed power from ordinary people is simply part of the role. Despite the absurd delusions, Xian still lives an otherwise normal academy life. When someone calls from outside his room, he quickly switches back into the routine of an ordinary student. The visitor is Euphia Queensroad, Xian's childhood friend, and the academy's top-ranked student. Unlike him, Euphia is a genuine S-rank mage with the ability and reputation to match. Euphia says she heard about Xian's mock battle and brings him a recovery potion. Xian accepts it with thanks, touched that she came to check on him. Euphia reminds him that he is still C-rank and warns him not to push himself too hard. Xian agrees aloud, but his expression makes it obvious that his imagination is already running in another direction. Unable to resist, Xian declares that even Euphia cannot measure the true power sleeping inside him. In his mind, the possibilities of that hidden strength are practically infinite. He promises that one day he will show her the truth and tells Euphia to be ready. To Xian, This is another perfectly dramatic declaration from a sealed great mage. Euphia simply reaches out and gently pats him, accepting his strange words without arguing. Her calm response completely disarms the intimidating atmosphere Shion was trying to create. With a small blush, Euphia says she is looking forward to seeing it. Shion suddenly feels a chill, as if her sincerity is somehow more dangerous than mockery would have been. The awkward moment passes, and Euphia invites him to eat lunch together. Shion happily accepts, returning to ordinary school life almost instantly. As the two walk through the academy, other students notice them together. Euphia's status and appearance draw attention, while people whisper about the strange C-rank boy walking beside her. Shion is delighted by the attention, interpreting the scene as proof that his ordinary disguise is working perfectly. To him, standing beside an elite mage, while appearing completely average, is exactly the kind of hidden master atmosphere he wants. Euphia notices Shion muttering to himself and immediately recognizes the behavior. She realizes he has once again disappeared into one of his strange fantasies. Watching him, Euphia remembers that Shion was not always like this. About 3 years earlier, his personality changed, and the boy she knew began acting like an entirely different person. At the cafeteria, trouble is already brewing. A group of rough students is harassing another C-class boy while everyone nearby watches the situation grow more uncomfortable. One bully physically shoves the student and mocks him for being a weak C-rank. The victim is clearly outmatched and has little room to fight back. Shion and Euphia arrive just as the confrontation worsens. Euphia points out that the cafeteria belongs to everyone, but the bullies have no intention of listening politely. Shion takes one look at the scene and quietly decides to step in. Euphia watches him, already sensing that he is about to do something reckless. Instead of starting a fight, Shion casually walks over, throws an arm around the bullied student, and asks if he can eat with them too. His sudden friendliness completely changes the rhythm of the confrontation. The bullies immediately snap at him for interfering and point out that Shion is C-class as well. To them, he is just another weakling getting in the way. Shion calmly turns their insult back on them, pretending not to understand who they mean by weaklings. His deliberately dense response only makes the aggressors angrier. When the bully keeps insulting the other students, Shion finally drops the joking tone. He tells the man not to speak that way about people in front of him, his expression becoming unexpectedly serious. The enraged bully punches Shion in the face. Euphia is shocked, but Shion refuses to back down even after taking the blow. Shion tells the bully that a person's worth cannot be measured by magical talent alone. The words are simple, but his refusal to yield leaves the aggressor momentarily stunned. He continues by saying that even weak people have their own lives and their own pride. Being stronger does not give anyone the right to trample over that. Shion then asks the bully whether he really understands something so basic. His calm challenge hits harder than the punch he just received. Rather than escalating the violence, Shion says this is a good opportunity and offers to teach them something. The bullies expect another threat, but his next move is completely different. Shion simply asks why everyone cannot sit down and eat together. The absurdly peaceful suggestion after such a tense confrontations leaves the bully speechless. But Shion's intense stare and theatrical aura make the invitation feel far more sinister than he intends. The surrounding students panic at the atmosphere and decide this strange C-ranker is not normal. The bullies ultimately retreat, and nearby students wonder whether they were overwhelmed by Shion's terrifying aura. Shion, of course, is thrilled that his dramatic act seems to have worked. Euphia looks at him with complete seriousness and interprets the scene in her own way. To her, Shion's presence resembles the aura of an impossibly powerful SSS-Rank mage. Once the danger passes, Euphia checks whether Shion is hurt. He answers that he is fine, while the rescued student also thanks him for stepping in. Shion brushes off the injury and tells the others not to worry. Compared with the brutal training he puts himself through, a single punch is nothing, though he is still encouraged to visit the infirmary. Euphia scolds Shion for doing something so dangerous without thinking about how worried she would be. Shion can only stand there and accept the lecture. Afterward, Shion sits with the student he protected. The quiet moment shows that beneath all the ridiculous role-playing, he genuinely stepped in because he could not ignore someone being mistreated. Shion explains that helping a classmate in trouble is only natural. Euphia listens and realizes that, despite everything that changed about his personality, this part of him is exactly the same as it was years ago. Xian thanks Euphia for worrying about him, while everyone settles back down. The confrontation ends without a magical duel, and the cafeteria slowly returns to normal. The rescued student continues talking with Xian over lunch. Their awkward conversation shows how quickly Xian can move from frightening theatrics back to ordinary friendliness. After thinking about Xian's actions, the student begins to wonder what kind of person he really is. Between the rescue and Xian's unusual relationship with Euphia, nothing about him seems easy to categorize. When asked directly, Xian pauses for maximum dramatic effect. He then begins the same introduction he always falls back on. Xian declares that he is simply a C-rank magic student. No secret title, no noble lineage, no official reputation. At least, that is the identity he gives everyone else. In Xian's imagination, even that ordinary introduction feels perfectly delivered. His dramatic inner world turns a simple self-description into another triumphant performance. Lunch continues with ordinary chatter, including Euphia reminding everyone to actually eat their food. The earlier tension fades into the background as the group resumes a normal school day. Euphia reflects on Xian with a small smile. As a mage, his abilities are undeniably third-rate, but his stubborn personality and willingness to help people are anything but ordinary. The chapter closes with an ominous promise. This seemingly insignificant C-rank student will eventually become involved in a crisis that threatens the academy itself. A chapter illustration marks the transition, showing the academy and its leading students before the story moves into Xian's next misadventure. Chapter 2 begins with a quieter setup. Xian is about to spend a day away from regular classes, giving his overactive imagination plenty of room to run wild. The Academy's rankings highlight just how exceptional Euphia is. She stands at the very top with an almost perfect overall score, making the gap between her and Xian look enormous. As the results are being discussed, Euphia calls out to Xian. He turns toward her, already expecting another conversation about school. Euphia asks how his exams went. Surrounded by other students, Xian answers casually while she waits to hear his result. Xian reacts with his usual awkward confidence as the subject of grades comes up. The conversation seems ordinary at first, but the comparison between him and Euphia is about to reveal another strange side of him. Euphia points out that Xian somehow scored exactly 49 points in every subject. With 5 nearly identical results and an overall rank of 145th, his grades look almost too perfectly mediocre to be accidental. Caught by the suspiciously neat pattern, Xian can only laugh awkwardly and call it a coincidence. His attempt to sound casual does little to make the result look any less deliberate. The strange truth is that Xian has almost no talent as a mage, yet his academic knowledge is actually excellent enough to rival Euphia's. In that one area, he really is hiding ability far beyond what his C-rank image suggests. Their conversation ends, and the two continue down the academy corridor. For a moment, nothing dramatic happens, giving Euphia the chance to bring up something more personal. Euphia quietly confirms that tomorrow is a day off. Once Xian agrees, she hesitates, as if gathering the courage to ask him something she has been thinking about. Blushing, Euphia asks whether Xian would like to visit the bookstore with her. Unfortunately, he apologizes and says he already has plans, promising that they can go together another time. Euphia hides her disappointment while Xian walks away feeling guilty. He knows he has turned down his childhood friend, but tomorrow's plans are apparently too important for him to abandon. In Xian's mind, the reason sounds far more dramatic than a normal day off. He tells himself there is an enemy he absolutely must defeat, turning tomorrow's outing into yet another grand mission. The next morning, Xian rides a mana-powered train into the city. His day off has begun, and he is already preparing to immerse himself in the fantasy world he loves so much. Dressed in a long dark coat that perfectly fits his secret warrior image, Xian steps off the train and heads deeper into the capital alone. His destination is the western district of the royal capital. The busy streets provide plenty of scenery, but Xian is searching for somewhere with a much darker atmosphere. He walks through the crowded shopping district while studying his surroundings, and, instead of enjoying ordinary sightseeing, he is clearly looking for the perfect stage for one of his imaginary adventures. Eventually, Xian slips into a secluded alley and glances behind him. The empty passage is exactly the kind of location that makes his imagination run wild. Inside his fantasy, Shion turns and coolly calls out an unseen pursuer, claiming he deliberately led them somewhere isolated so they can finally show themselves. The imagined scene immediately supplies him with a hooded enemy. Shion pictures the stranger admitting that he followed him from the mana train, while Shion responds like a veteran hunter who has finally found his prey. The fantasy escalates as the hooded enemy fires a dark lightning spell. Shion imagines calmly absorbing or neutralizing the attack, making himself look completely untouchable. He then envisions retaliating with an even stronger technique, boasting that anyone foolish enough to oppose his mysterious organization has already sealed their fate. But the dramatic confrontation is nothing more than Shion entertaining himself. The scene collapses into comedy, exposing the supposed assassin battle as another elaborate daydream. Reality returns to the ordinary back alley, where Shion is simply standing among passing civilians. He happily thinks about how perfect this place would be for a battle, proving he came here specifically to feed his delusions. Shion even laughs to himself, while imagining a tragic revenge story for his secret warrior persona. Nearby pedestrians keep their distance, and a mother quickly tells her child not to stare at the strange man. Still chasing the ideal ending for his roleplay, Shion decides he needs one final location. Then something ahead catches his attention, and he excitedly declares that he has found the perfect spot. Before he can continue his fantasy, a hooded girl stumbles in the crowded street. Her sudden fall pulls Shion's attention away from his imaginary mission and back to reality. Shion asks whether she is all right, but the girl immediately insists that it is nothing and pulls her hood back into place. Since she clearly wants no fuss, he accepts her answer. Then Shion notices the unusual eye-shaped ornament around her neck. His entire attitude changes as he excitedly tells her how incredibly cool the mysterious accessory looks. The girl responds with aristocratic irritation, scolding Shion for getting in her way and declaring that she is far too busy for this. Shion awkwardly apologizes as she prepares to leave. Her haughty behavior instantly activates Shion's imagination. Wondering whether she could be some hidden person of importance, he decides to investigate her by entering his personal world of phantasma. Within that delusion, sinister shadows and supernatural hands surround the girl. Shion imagines himself using a terrifying secret ability to expose the truth concealed beneath her ordinary appearance. His imaginary analysis focuses on the girl's strange ornament and mysterious demeanor. To Shion, every detail seems like evidence that she must be carrying an important hidden identity. Elsewhere, the girl's own circumstances reveal why she acts so restless. She is thoroughly bored with her sheltered life and complains about having nothing interesting to do. Surrounded by attendants and rigid expectations, the girl makes it clear that she wants freedom instead of another day trapped by formal routines. Her frustration only makes her more determined to slip outside. The people responsible for watching her panic, as she ignores their attempts to keep her safely contained. The rebellious girl is clearly accustomed to causing trouble whenever palace life becomes too suffocating. Back in the city, Shion's delusion reaches its conclusion. Based on nothing more than her attitude and appearance, he becomes convinced that the hooded stranger fits the role of a runaway tomboy princess perfectly. Shion silently builds an entire backstory for her, imagining that she grew tired of boring days in a castle and secretly escaped to experience the outside world. Taking his own fantasy completely seriously, Shion apologizes for bothering her and grandly tells the girl to enjoy her precious freedom while she still can. The narrator makes the joke explicit. Shion is the kind of man who can turn a completely random passerby into the main character of an elaborate delusion without a shred of evidence. After getting distracted by the supposed tomboy princess, Shion remembers his original plan and hurries toward the abandoned factory ruins on the edge of town. He climbs to a high rooftop and settles into a dramatic pose. From up there, the empty industrial ruins look exactly like the stage a dark lone warrior should occupy. Shion waits patiently as the evening wind finally begins to blow. The movement of his coat and hair immediately makes the scene feel more cinematic in his head. With perfect seriousness, he mutters that the wind is wailing. It is the kind of painfully dramatic line he has clearly been waiting for a chance to say. Inside, Shion is ecstatic. He admits he deliberately waited for the wind, just so the line would work, and the successful timing fills him with ridiculous satisfaction. As the sunset deepens and the wind grows stronger, Shion decides the atmosphere is finally perfect. Every detail now matches the ominous scene he imagined for himself. Looking down from above, Shion fully embraces the role of an elite member of his fictional dark organization. In his mind, the strongest magic swordsman has finally taken the stage. Unfortunately, the dramatic setup requires a lot of patience. 3 hours later, Shion is still standing on the rooftop, stubbornly maintaining his lonely dark hero act. When moonlight finally completes the scene, Shion is pleased with his perseverance. Then a very real shout echoes from below, abruptly interrupting his roleplay and making him look down. Below the factory ruins, Shion sees the same hooded girl from earlier being chased and cornered by several rough-looking men. This time, the danger is not part of his imagination. The thugs surround the girl and celebrate their luck at finding her alone. With nowhere obvious to escape, she is trapped while they close in. They taunt her for wandering into a dead end and demand her valuables, with one man making his intentions especially disgusting. The girl firmly warns them not to come any closer. The men ignore her warning and continue threatening her. Even though she refuses to submit, the situation is quickly becoming dangerous enough that someone needs to intervene. As one of the thugs reaches toward her, the girl recoils and prepares to resist. Before they can go any further, another voice suddenly comes from above. Shion casually calls down to the men, joking that they seem to be having a good time. His entrance immediately draws everyone's attention away from the girl. Leaping into the scene, Shion even asks whether he can join them. Rather than announcing himself as a hero, he deliberately makes his entrance sound like another villain has arrived. The thugs demand to know who he is, giving Shion exactly the opening he wanted. He launches into an absurdly theatrical introduction about being a man clad in shadows. The girl recognizes Shion as the strange man from the afternoon. He greets her casually and acts as though fate has simply brought them together again. The thugs are confused when they realize the two have already met. What first looked like a random crazy kid now feels slightly more suspicious to them. One thug mocks Shion for being nothing more than a brat and says they might have humored him if he actually looked intimidating. Shion refuses to back down and answers with the same arrogant confidence. When the man asks whether he is ready to die, Shion replies that he has been ready for a long time. The line sounds fearless, even though his real abilities are nowhere near what his performance suggests. Shion declares that he will bury all 3 men together in one oversized coffin. The thugs finally lose patience and prepare to attack him for real. Inside, however, Shion is thrilled rather than heroic. Saving a girl from a pack of thugs is exactly the fantasy scenario he has dreamed about countless times, and he cannot believe it is actually happening. Then one of the men forms a genuine magic circle. Shion's excitement immediately turns into concern as he realizes these are not harmless street punks who can be scared away with ordinary acting. The thug's physical build already looked dangerous, but the fact that he can also use real magic makes the situation much worse. Shion now understands he may have picked a fight above his level. Judging from the spell forming in front of him, Shion realizes this man possesses far more magical ability than an average criminal. His dramatic rescue has suddenly become a genuinely life-threatening battle. The thug unleashes the B-rank spell Flamethrower. Faced with a level of magic he cannot simply overpower, Shion's internal confidence collapses, and he wonders whether he is actually about to die. The contrast is brutal. In his imagination, Shion is the strongest mage alive, but the real Shion is now sweating in front of an attack that could easily overwhelm him. The narrator confirms it once again. Outside of his fantasies, Shion is still only a mediocre C-rank student, which makes his current confrontation with a B-rank spell extremely dangerous. The thug notices Shion's hesitation and mocks him for finally understanding real magic. Shion desperately tries not to let his fear show in front of either the criminals or the girl. To buy time, Shion pretends that his silence is calm analysis rather than panic. His composed expression makes the thug hesitate just enough for the bluff to remain believable. Internally, Shion admits he is in serious trouble because his own spell cannot activate fast enough. He has an option that might save him, but using it is not something he wants to do carelessly. The criminals offer him one last chance to crawl away if he abandons the girl. Their disgusting threat makes Shion stop thinking about his own safety for a moment. Even though he knows he could get hurt, Xian cannot bring himself to run. In his eyes, turning his back while someone directly in front of him needs help would be unforgivable. That conviction hardens into a simple decision. Whatever happens to him, he will not abandon the girl. For once, the heroic ideal behind his delusions is completely sincere. The thug rejects his answer and prepares to kill him. Xian has run out of easy exits, so the confrontation is about to become real whether he is ready or not. Xian remembers why he wanted to become a mage in the first place. Beneath all the embarrassing roleplay, he genuinely dreamed of becoming someone strong enough to protect other people. If he cannot protect someone when danger is directly in front of him, then all of that training and all of those ideals mean nothing. Xian decides he has to try, even with his limited power. The criminals move to attack together while Xian steels himself. He is still badly outmatched, but his refusal to flee forces the situation into its next stage. Ironically, the thugs themselves begin arguing. The B-rank spell is powerful enough to endanger allies too, and the others panic when the caster seems ready to unleash it without thinking. They shout at their companion to hold back before he burns everyone in the area. The argument accidentally gives Xian the extra seconds he desperately needed. Internally, Xian celebrates surviving what nearly became instant death. Outwardly, he keeps the act going and mocks them, as though their hesitation merely proved how inferior they are. The criminals try to regain control of the situation, but Xian refuses to let the opening disappear. He doubles down on his terrifying persona before they can recognize how nervous he really is. With absolute theatrical confidence, Xian tells them they still fail to understand the overwhelming difference between them. He promises to demonstrate what true magic actually means. The declaration sounds like the prelude to an ultimate technique, but Xian's real plan is much more practical. He starts combining several simple spells into the most intimidating bluff he can create. First, Xian casts Creation Arma and produces a sword. The weapon looks impressive enough to make the criminals hesitate, even though its actual quality is extremely poor. Holding the conjured blade like a seasoned killer, Xian invites them to come closer if they dare. Every movement is designed to convince them that attacking him would be suicide. The added visual effects make his appearance even more suspicious. One thug begins connecting Xian's glowing eyes and strange equipment to rumors circulating in the criminal underworld. The men suddenly wonder whether this boy could belong to a terrifying secret group they have heard about. Their own imagination starts doing more work than Xian's magic ever could. At last, the misunderstanding gives Xian a legendary identity. The criminals believe he is the infamous Crimson-Eyed Fiendblade, a supposedly monstrous magic swordsman. Xian is shocked, but the name is far too cool to reject. The truth is much less impressive. Creation Arma makes a brittle, low-quality weapon, while simple light spells alter his eyes and decorate his equipment. Xian has built a terrifying image almost entirely from beginner-level magic. Unfortunately for the thugs, the rumors about the Crimson-Eyed Fiendblade are horrific. Once they convince themselves Xian is that person, every exaggerated story they have heard becomes another reason to fear him. Instead of testing his actual strength, the criminals drop to their knees and beg for mercy. Xian wins the confrontation before a real fight ever begins. Inside, Xian is delighted by how amazing the title Crimson-Eyed Fiendblade sounds. Rather than correcting the mistake, he immediately decides to play the role for everything it is worth. One thug desperately prostrates himself and begs to be spared. Xian answers with a cold, dramatic refusal, terrifying them even more. For reasons known only to his Chunibu heart, Xian continues acting like a merciless underground executioner. The more frightened the criminals become, the more committed he gets to the performance. The thugs plead desperately and promise they will abandon crime and live honestly from now on. Their fear has turned the entire confrontation into a bizarre courtroom run by Xian's imagination. Xian says he cannot judge every sin from their past because he knows nothing about it. For a moment, his speech almost sounds surprisingly reasonable. Then he adds that trying to assault the girl was already serious, and daring to attack him personally has made their position even worse. His mock judgment quickly returns to pure intimidation. With a terrifying grin, Xian declares that striking at him is reason enough to slice them into ribbons. The criminals have no idea how much of that threat is just performance. Before deciding their fate, Xian asks whether they truly swear to change their ways. The men are too frightened to consider anything except agreeing. The criminals immediately swear that they will reform. Every one of them is now completely convinced that a wrong answer could get them killed on the spot. Xian warns that if they ever break their promise, he will hunt them down no matter where they run. His ridiculous persona continues sounding more dangerous with every sentence. He even claims that hiding inside a dragon's mouth would not save them because he would still find and kill them without fail. The thugs take every word literally. Xian finally asks whether he has made himself clear. The terrified criminals answer yes without hesitation, bringing his absurd intimidation campaign to a successful conclusion. The terrified thugs finally flee at full speed, apologizing as they disappear into the night. Xian watches them go, successfully ending the crisis without ever having to prove whether the terrifying crimson-eyed fiendblade can actually fight. Once the criminals are gone, Xian's back toward the girl and finally relaxes. The improvised sword and intimidating performance have done their job, so he checks on the person he came to protect. Xian asks the girl if she is all right, expecting at least a little gratitude. Instead, she stares at him in silence for a moment, and her expression makes it obvious that the conversation is about to go in a very different direction. The girl immediately snaps that she is absolutely not all right. She complains that Xian barely did anything besides pull out a sword and look frightening, then smacks him for acting like some triumphant rescuer. Still irritated, she points out that his whole murderous justice performance made him look just as much like a villain as the men who attacked her. Xian's dramatic rescue clearly did not make the heroic impression he imagined. Xian explains that the criminals merely mistook him for someone else, and that his real nature is completely different. The girl quickly realizes that, despite his terrifying act, he is not actually the notorious villain they believed him to be. Rather than simply admit the misunderstanding, Xian launches into another grand line about how concepts like good and evil mean nothing to him because he walks his own path. He is secretly thrilled by how legendary the sentence sounds. The girl decides the details no longer matter. Since Xian is clearly better than the creeps who chased her, she grants him the special privilege of escorting her back toward the city. Her commanding attitude makes the request sound more like an order from royalty than a favor. Xian goes along with it, still amused by how perfectly she fits the princess character he imagined earlier. The two walk together beneath the night skies until the lights of the city come into view. The girl points out that they are almost there, bringing their strange encounter close to its end. As they walk, the girl grudgingly admits that Xian technically did help her, even if his performance also ruined what she calls her little adventure. She clearly wants to repay him without sounding overly grateful. Her pride refuses to let the matter end with a simple thank you. Xian notices that the way she talks about honor and repayment sounds suspiciously royal, which only strengthens his earlier fantasy about her identity. After thinking for a moment, the girl suddenly announces that she knows how to settle the debt. Xian waits curiously as she reaches for something she has been carrying. She presents the distinctive eye-shaped ornament Xian admired earlier. The moment he sees it up close, his Chunibyu instincts take over, and he openly marvels at how incredibly cool it looks. Xian hesitates to accept something that appears so valuable, but the girl insists. To her, giving him the ornament is simply an appropriate payment for escorting and helping her. She casually adds that trinkets like this are practically lying around everywhere at her estate. The comment sounds absurdly wealthy, although Xian is still too caught up in the accessory itself to fully process the implication. Xian tries to refuse, because accepting such an expensive-looking gift feels excessive. The girl tells him to sell it if necessary and use the money to improve himself, making it clear that she has already decided he is taking it. When Xian continues hesitating, she becomes offended and asks whether he thinks the ornament is dirty simply because she wore it. Faced with her escalating anger, he hurriedly gives in and agrees to accept the gift. Xian formally receives the ornament beneath the moonlight. What began as a random encounter has now left him holding a mysterious and apparently valuable keepsake from a girl whose identity he still does not know. For a brief moment, the two simply look at each other and smile. After all the ridiculous acting and danger, the atmosphere finally becomes calm and sincere. Shion promises to treasure the gift, treating it with far more seriousness than the girl expected. She lets him keep it, however he wishes, satisfied that her debt has been repaid. As they reach the edge of town, the girl notices people searching nearby and says it looks as though they have finally found her. Shion understands that his escort duty is now finished. With the matter settled, Shion raises a hand and casually says farewell. He is perfectly prepared to leave without ever learning who the mysterious girl actually is. Before he can disappear, she calls him back and asks if she can ask one last question. Her expression has become more serious after everything that happened. The girl finally asks the question that has been bothering her. Who is Shion really? After watching criminals flee from his mere reputation, his claim to be ordinary is difficult for her to accept. Shion answers with complete sincerity. He introduces himself as Shion Ichinose and says he is nothing more than an average C-rank magic student. The girl stares at him in disbelief. After everything she witnessed, the idea that this bizarre and terrifying boy is merely an ordinary student sounds like a joke. Shion suggests that next time she secretly goes out, she should hire a real mercenary instead of wandering alone. She tells him to study hard, and the two finally part ways for real. The instant he is alone, Shion celebrates because he thinks his farewell line was absolutely perfect. He briefly wonders whether the girl's arrogance and noble manner could mean something important, then dismisses the possibility as too ridiculous. Back at the palace, a frantic attendant named Eileen rushes to the girl's side and demands to know where she has been. The runaway calmly returns, as though causing a kingdom-wide search were no big deal. Eileen is overwhelmed by the girl's casual explanation of the night's events. While the attendant tries to process everything, the runaway noble seems more interested in the strange boy she met than in the trouble she caused. The truth is finally revealed. The hooded girl is Luna Lindez Gilbert, the third princess of the Gilbert Kingdom. Shion's completely baseless tomboy princess's delusion had somehow guessed her identity almost perfectly. Chapter 4 begins before sunrise, because Shion's day starts extremely early. He sleeps only about an hour, then uses potions and recovery magic to offset the exhaustion so he can devote more time to training. When asked where he is going so early, Shion says he is heading to the campus training grounds. He even invites the curious observer to come along if they want to see what he does every morning. At the 7th training ground, Shion immediately begins firing spells into practice targets. His routine is not casual exercise. He is deliberately pushing his magic as hard as his body can tolerate. Spell after spell erupts across the training area as Shion continues without resting. The repeated casting makes it obvious that this exhausting routine is something he has practiced for a long time. When questioned about the purpose of the training, Shion explains that he is trying to increase his total mana by repeatedly exhausting himself and forcing his body to recover. The method sounds insane, because Shion deliberately drives himself into complete mana depletion. Even the person watching points out that doing this on purpose is practically suicidal. Shion admits that he has come dangerously close to dying more times than he can count during the past year of training. To him, however, surviving those limits is simply part of becoming stronger. He insists that continuing this routine every day has to produce results eventually. The logic is reckless, but even his companion has to admit there is a stubborn consistency behind the method. By the end of the session, Shion is barely able to stand, yet he still jokes about whether he might actually die from overdoing it. His body is exhausted long before his determination gives out. Shion accelerates recovery by drinking potions whenever his mana is depleted, then resumes training again. Repeating the cycle day after day gradually expands how much punishment and magic his body can endure. After another brutal session, Shion finally sits down among empty potion bottles and training equipment. The quiet scene makes the cost of his routine obvious. Every small improvement is purchased through relentless effort. Even while resting, Shion talks about continuing this cycle until his mana capacity grows enough to matter. He is painfully aware that talent will never carry him, so repetition is the only path he trusts. A montage shows just how extreme the routine has become. Shion casts attack magic, practices weapons, pushes his body physically, drinks recovery potions, and starts all over again whenever he can move. When Euphia asks whether he is finally finished for the day. Shion answers yes with a tired laugh. His exhausted condition makes it clear that finished only means he has reached the point where he can no longer continue safely. Yufia quietly considers what she has just seen. Shion's training looks foolishly dangerous from the outside, but there is no denying the amount of effort he is willing to endure. Shion describes the experience in the grandest possible terms, imagining it as a ritual of awakening or a true step toward greater power. Even his recovery routine becomes part of his heroic self-image. Yufia arrives carrying another case of recovery potions. Shion thanks her as always, joking that her sleepy appearance is as bad as ever, while she tells him to stop doing dangerous things alone. The narration reveals that this reckless training has continued day after day. If Shion had possessed even a little natural talent, the sheer amount of work he puts in might already have made him one of the Academy's strongest students. And yet, despite all that effort, Shion remains stuck at SSS-Rank. His progress is real, but his natural magical limits refuse to disappear, simply because he works harder than everyone else. Yufia leaves him with the potions and quietly says that all this hard work will surely pay off someday. Shion promises to return the favor and watches her go, unaware that another strange encounter is waiting nearby. The next morning at the academy, Shion runs into Professor Rina Restia. She is carrying a large stack of books and greets him warmly before asking for a small favor. Rina asks whether Shion would mind helping her carry the books. He agrees immediately, since assisting his teacher with something this simple is hardly a burden. Shion takes the heavy stack and follows Rina toward the laboratory. She thanks him and asks him to bring the books inside while she handles something else. Arriving at the laboratory door, Shion reaches for the handle without expecting anything unusual. From his perspective, he is only completing a routine errand for his teacher. To his surprise, the door is already unlocked and slightly open. Shion pushes it wider, having no reason to suspect that someone inside is in the middle of changing clothes. The instant Shion looks inside, he freezes. A female student is changing in the room, and both of them realize the situation at exactly the same horrifying moment. Their eyes meet and panic explodes on both sides. The girl hurriedly covers herself while Shion's brain struggles to find any possible response that might keep him alive. Unable to deal with the embarrassment normally, Shion retreats into his favorite defense mechanism, an absurd Chunibyu persona. In his head, he transforms the accident into the awakening of some sealed dark god. Shion tries to speak, but the girl's furious expression makes every ordinary explanation feel hopeless. Whatever he says next is going to determine whether this misunderstanding becomes much worse. The girl's anger erupts so violently that Shion is immediately put on the defensive. His ridiculous roleplay only makes the situation look more suspicious instead of calming her down. Shion fully commits to the persona of Vasago Deus Gregor, boasting that no pathetic seal could contain him, and describing himself like an ancient evil trapped inside a human vessel. He continues rambling that mortals are foolish, and that eras mean nothing to him. The girl can only stare as the boy who accidentally walked in on her somehow makes the incident even stranger. Shion grandly threatens to plunge humanity into the darkest depths of absolute terror. It is a desperate attempt to bury his embarrassment beneath a performance so ridiculous that ordinary conversation becomes impossible. He even claims he will begin his dark campaign by slaughtering an important bloodline. The outrageous line finally pushes the already furious girl beyond the limit of her patience. Shion's performance collapses into frantic damage control as the atmosphere turns genuinely dangerous. The girl is not impressed by his dark god routine in the slightest. She warns him in unmistakable terms that if he keeps running his mouth after accidentally seeing her change, the consequences will be far worse than embarrassment. With murderous seriousness, the girl swears that she will take Shion's head clean off if he pushes her any further. Shion immediately realizes she is not joking. Shion hurriedly agrees to stop. Internally, he is terrified by how completely serious she looks, and he understands that his usual dramatic nonsense will not save him here. The girl angrily reminds Shion that she is one of the Academy's elite students, and demands to know why he thinks he can simply walk away after humiliating her like this. Shion protests that the accident was not his fault because the door was unlocked, and he had only been sent there with books. The argument reveals that the girl herself had been changing in a room, not meant for that purpose. realizing the circumstances were partly her own mistake does not erase the humiliation. She still wants some way to settle the score and asks what Xian intends to do about it. Xian calmly says he understands, then reaches for his own belt. The girl's anger instantly turns into confused panic when she realizes he is apparently about to start removing his clothes. Xian explains his bizarre logic. Since he accidentally saw her underwear, the only fair way for her to humiliate him back would be to look at his. She screams that only an absolute pervert would think this makes sense. The girl abandons the idea immediately, admitting she had been considering making him crawl and lick her boots instead. Even that plan sounds less disturbing than Xian's proposed fair exchange. Finally, she chooses a solution both of them can understand. Introducing herself as Eliza Loreld, she formally challenges Xian to a duel so she can settle the humiliation with magic instead. The confrontation moves to the Academy's 5th arena. With no crowd and no distractions, the private duel between Xian and one of the Academy's highest-ranked students is ready to begin. Eliza confirms that they are really going through with it, while Xian faces her from across the arena. Chapter 5 officially begins. The Academy's 5th-ranked student versus the supposedly ordinary C-ranker. Xian notices there is no proctor and asks whether they really intend to fight without supervision. Eliza is perfectly comfortable with the arrangement, since the arena's protections should keep the match from becoming fatal. Eliza makes it clear she plans to beat him thoroughly without holding back. Xian, meanwhile, remains relaxed enough to joke, which only irritates her more before the duel has even started. Eliza formally introduces herself as Eliza Loreld of Class A and reminds Xian that she is ranked 5th in the entire academy. Privately, she is still furious enough to enjoy the idea of reducing him to ash. Xian simply acknowledges the introduction. His calm response gives Eliza none of the fear or nervousness she expected from a low-ranked opponent. Xian gives his own introduction. Xian Ichino's, 2nd-year Class C, born to a merchant family and known for nothing remarkable. The deliberately ordinary profile sounds almost insulting beside Eliza's elite credentials. Eliza says she already remembers exactly who he is, and promises to blast what remains of him into tiny pieces. Her anger over the changing room incident has not cooled at all. Inside, Eliza is almost delighted. A private duel gives her the perfect chance to beat Xian black and blue without anyone interfering, and she is eager to begin. The two take their positions. Eliza looks carefree and overwhelmingly confident, while Xian says he is ready whenever she is. A coin is tossed to mark the start. The instant it hits the floor, the duel officially begins, and both students move at once. Xian immediately casts body reinforcement, while Eliza forms a powerful hellfire sphere. Their opening choices reveal the difference in style. He boosts himself for movement while she attacks with overwhelming magical force. Eliza launches the enormous sphere across the arena. The spell is far larger and more destructive than anything expected from an ordinary classroom exchange. Xian dodges the blast with reinforced speed, surprising Eliza. She realizes that even though he is supposedly C-rank, he can use enhancement magic well enough to escape a serious attack. Before the flames have even cleared, Xian rushes around the attack and closes the distance. He is not merely running away. He uses the opening to get behind Eliza. Eliza spins around in shock at how quickly he moved. The supposedly mediocre student is fast enough to force one of the Academy's best fighters to react immediately. Eliza casts Terra Shield and raises a defensive barrier before Xian can capitalize on his position. Her response is just as fast and disciplined as her ranking suggests. Xian's attack crashes against the shield while Eliza stabilizes her defense. Neither side has taken decisive damage, but both are already revealing techniques far beyond a casual spar. As the fight continues, Eliza recalls that a person's magical affinities are normally determined at birth. Most mages naturally specialize in a limited style, rather than freely mastering everything. Magic is broadly divided into different forms, including projectile spells, self-enhancement, and armament techniques. A typical student develops most strongly within the aptitude they were born with. Only exceptional mages can effectively master multiple systems. The more kinds of magic someone uses at a high level, the rarer and more suspicious their talent becomes. Legends even claim that the ancient SSS-Rank hero who once saved the world could wield multiple magical systems at extraordinary levels. That kind of versatility belongs to history, not ordinary students. Eliza realizes Xian has already shown reinforcement, offensive magic, and armament techniques with surprising competence. For someone officially labeled C rank, his range of abilities makes no sense. Based on what she has seen, Eliza starts treating Xian as a rare multi-aptitude wielder rather than a normal C ranker. His quiet performance is forcing her to revise her assumptions. Xian responds with irritating calm, as though Eliza's analysis has not exposed anything important. His relaxed attitude makes him look far more confident than his official rank should allow. Eliza tells herself that versatility still has a weakness. Mana is finite. Even a talented multi-aptitude mage must eventually run dry, and she is certain her own reserves will outlast his. Xian casually agrees with that basic principle. His answer gives Eliza no clue whether he has a counterplan, or simply accepts that he cannot compete in a battle of mana. Eliza regains confidence by reminding herself who she is. Whatever tricks Xian possesses, she is still the Academy's 5th-ranked student, and has far more raw magical capacity than an ordinary C-ranker. Xian, on the other hand, openly describes himself as nothing more than a simple C-ranker. The statement sounds absurd after everything he has just demonstrated, which only makes Eliza more wary. Eliza launches Tempest Arrow, one of the fastest spells in her arsenal. The projectile tears across the arena so quickly that there should be no time for Xian to escape normally. The attack appears to hit directly and erupts in a violent explosion. Eliza believes she has finally caught him cleanly and prepares to confirm the result. Then she realizes something is wrong. If Xian was truly caught by the attack, the movement she just witnessed should have been possible. The smoke clears with the two fighters separated across the arena. Xian is still standing, proving he avoided the supposedly unavoidable strike somehow. Eliza briefly wonders whether he teleported, but even that explanation makes no sense. His movement was too strange and too sudden for an ordinary mobility spell. The truth is revealed when Xian activates Limit Breaker. Accel, a high-level acceleration technique that explosively boosts his movement and perception. The spell sends him forward with speed Eliza cannot ignore. Limit Breaker. Accel is an inherited magic once associated with the Dragon Clan. By accelerating perception, reflexes, and physical motion, it grants a terrifying burst of speed that ordinary reinforcement cannot imitate. Because the spell requires an extremely rare and specific magical aptitude, it was believed to have vanished from history. Its original bloodline and practitioners disappeared long ago, leaving the technique almost legendary. A flashback shows how Xian learned about the forgotten spell from an old book Euphia had been carrying. What looked like obscure historical material immediately caught his attention. Xian became fascinated with ancient magic, even though most students considered such spells impractical relics. He studied the old text intensely instead of dismissing it as useless history. Euphia watched him obsess over the book and asked him not to overdo it. Xian promised to return it soon, but his excitement made it obvious he intended to study every detail first. Euphia eventually asked why Xian always pushes himself so far. He answers with the same dream he has carried since childhood. He wants to become the strongest mage alive. A younger Xian once declared that he would become strong enough to protect anyone who needed him. Behind the ridiculous SSS-Rank delusions, that desire to protect people has never actually changed. Driven by that stubborn conviction, Xian managed to reproduce high-level magic through study and relentless practice. Limit Breaker. Accel is one of the clearest results of that effort. Back in the duel, even Eliza struggles to believe what she is seeing. A C-rank student is using a technique she has never encountered in modern combat, forcing her to take him completely seriously. For the first time, Eliza actually trembles. Being pressured by someone she had dismissed as a low tier, nobody makes her wonder who Xian really is and how many abilities he has been hiding. Xian tells Eliza that if she has exhausted her options, it is time to finish the match. With complete confidence, he asks whether she is ready for what comes next. Eliza refuses to accept defeat and reveals that she still has a trump card. A huge magic circle forms as she prepares a spell far more dangerous than anything she has used so far. Eliza begins constructing fusion magic, wrapping one spell inside another to create a much larger composite attack. Even Xian has to admit that the technique is genuinely impressive. Instead of panicking, Xian becomes fascinated. He realizes Eliza has been deliberately saving advanced attacks beyond her ordinary arsenal, which makes the duel more interesting to him. Xian briefly considers what will happen if he stops relying on Limit Breaker. Axel tests Eliza's remaining cards directly. He knows the incoming spell is dangerous, but curiosity gets the better of him. Eliza unleashes an enormous fusion spell, whose scale reflects her extraordinary mana capacity. The sheer size of the attack completely exceeds what Xian expected from her remaining reserves. Seeing the massive spell, Xian cannot help thinking that this is an absurdly severe punishment for accidentally seeing her underwear. Unfortunately, Eliza is still taking the duel completely seriously. Xian tries to calculate Eliza's remaining mana from everything she has already cast. Because Limit Breaker, Axel consumes a huge amount of his own reserves, he assumes her large attacks must have drained her in the same way. The problem is that Xian still cannot draw out Limit Breaker, Axel's full potential, and the enormous attack leaves him almost nowhere to escape. He starts believing Eliza must finally be near empty. Xian reasons that a spell this massive should completely drain whatever mana Eliza has left. Convinced she has reached her limit, he prepares to win with a much simpler follow-up. Eliza watches him closely as his confidence returns. Neither fighter fully understands what the other is calculating, setting up the duel's final and most ridiculous misunderstanding. Xian prepares to exploit what he thinks is Eliza's depleted state, using basic low-rank magic and timing rather than another flashy technique. In his mind, the match is already entering checkmate. Eliza dares him to attack if he thinks he has found an opening. Xian, however, is far more interested in confirming that she truly has no mana left. With absolute confidence, Xian tells Eliza to hit him with her weakest beginner spell right now. He declares it checkmate, certain that she can no longer produce anything dangerous. The bizarre request leaves Eliza staring at him, while Xian confidently opens himself to the attack. He genuinely believes his mana calculation has solved the fight. Instead of a pathetic beginner spell, Eliza casts Frozen Fist of the Giant. A colossal mass of ice forms in front of Xian, instantly destroying his entire prediction. Xian stares in horror as the giant Frozen Fist comes crashing toward him. He cannot understand how Eliza still has so much mana remaining after everything she has already used. The attack fills the arena while Xian desperately reassesses the situation. His clever calculation has failed for one simple reason. Eliza's mana pool is far larger than he ever imagined. With the enormous ice spell bearing down on him, Xian makes the most practical decision of the entire duel. He abruptly calls out that he surrenders, leaving Eliza stunned by the sudden ending. The match ends with Eliza Laureled declared the winner, and Xian Ichino's the loser, with no serious injuries. Xian's strange versatility shocked an elite student, but one spectacular miscalculation about her remaining mana still cost him the fight.